The FBI, NSA, and their international pals have graced us with yet another Cybersecurity Advisory, CSA, this time starring the ever-so-popular Ubiquiti EdgeRouters and their starring role in the global cybercrime drama directed by none other than App28. In this latest blockbuster release from our cybersecurity overlords, we learn how Ubiquiti EdgeRouters, those user-friendly, Linux-based gadgets, have become the unwilling accomplices in APT28's nefarious schemes. With their default credentials and, what firewall, security, these routers are practically rolling out the red carpet for cyber villains. If you're using Ubiquiti EdgeRouters and haven't been hacked yet, congratulations. But maybe check those settings, update that firmware, and change those passwords. Or better yet, just send your router on a nice vacation to a place where App28 can't find it. Happy securing. Introduction. The FBI, NSA, US Cyber Command, and international partners have issued a joint cybersecurity advisory warning about the use of compromised Ubiquiti EdgeRouters in global cyber operations. These routers have become popular targets due to their user-friendly Linux-based operating system, often shipped with default credentials and limited security protections. APT28, a threat actor group, has been exploiting these vulnerabilities since at least 2022. They've used the compromised routers for various malicious activities, including harvesting credentials, collecting NTLM-v2 digests, proxying network traffic, and hosting malicious content. The group gained access to the routers using default credentials and Trojanized OpenSSH server processes. Once they had root access, they could freely install tools and hide their activities. APT28 also deployed custom Python scripts on the routers to collect and validate stolen webmail credentials, often obtained through sophisticated phishing campaigns. Additionally, APT28 exploited a critical vulnerability in Microsoft Outlook to gather NTLM-v2 digests from targeted accounts. They used publicly available tools to assist with NTLM relay attacks, further expanding their capabilities. The advisory urges EdgeRouter users and network defenders to take immediate action. Recommended steps include performing hardware factory resets, updating firmware, changing default credentials, and implementing stronger firewall rules. These measures are crucial to mitigate the risks posed by this ongoing threat. Key points and takeaways. APT28 has been exploiting Ubiquiti EdgeRouters to conduct global cyber operations. These activities include harvesting credentials, collecting NTLM-v2 digests, proxying network traffic, and hosting malicious content. Multiple intelligence and cybersecurity agencies have issued a joint cybersecurity advisory detailing the threat and providing mitigation recommendations. The advisory outlines observed tactics, techniques, and procedures, indicators of compromise, and maps the threat actor's activity to the MITRE ATT and CK framework. It urges immediate action to mitigate the threat, including performing hardware factory resets, updating firmware, changing default credentials, and implementing strategic firewall rules. APT28 has used compromised edge routers since at least 2022 to facilitate covert operations against various industries and countries. Edge routers are popular due to their user-friendly Linux-based operating system but are often shipped with default credentials and limited firewall protections, making them vulnerable to exploitation. Organizations using Ubiquiti EdgeRouters must take immediate action to secure their devices. Recommended actions include resetting hardware to factory settings, updating to the latest firmware, changing default usernames and passwords, and implementing strategic firewall rules. Network defenders should be aware of the provided tactics, techniques, procedures, and indicators of compromise to detect and respond to potential compromises. Threat actor activity. APT28, a sophisticated threat actor, has been conducting widespread operations targeting a diverse range of industries across multiple countries. Their activities pose significant risks to various sectors, including critical infrastructure, government agencies, and private businesses. The group's targets span numerous industries, from aerospace and defense to energy, manufacturing, and transportation. This broad scope suggests a strategic approach to gathering intelligence and potentially disrupting operations across key economic and security sectors. Geographically, APT28's focus extends across Europe, the Middle East, and North America, with a particular emphasis on Ukraine. This targeting pattern aligns with geopolitical interests and suggests potential state-sponsored motivations. The potential consequences of APT28's activities are far-reaching and severe. Organizations in targeted industries face risks of data breaches, which could lead to the theft of sensitive information, intellectual property, and trade secrets. This loss of proprietary data could have long-term impacts on competitiveness and innovation. Critical infrastructure sectors, such as energy and transportation, are particularly vulnerable. Disruptions to these systems could have cascading effects on public safety and economic stability. For instance, compromised power grids or transportation networks could lead to widespread service outages or safety hazards. Government networks are also at risk, with potential implications for national security. The theft of classified information or compromise of government systems could enable espionage or provide adversaries with strategic advantages. Financial impacts are another significant concern. Targeted organizations may face substantial losses due to operational disruptions, theft of valuable data, or damage to their reputation. The costs of incident response, system recovery, and implementing enhanced security measures can be substantial. In sectors like manufacturing and oil and gas, there's an added risk of safety incidents if operational technology networks are compromised. Interference with industrial control systems could potentially lead to physical damage or hazardous conditions. Perhaps most critically, these attacks can erode public trust in affected organizations and industries. This loss of confidence can have long-lasting effects on customer relationships, market position, and overall business viability. MuBot Open SSH Trojan. The App28 group, a sophisticated threat actor, has been exploiting Ubiquiti EdgeRouters using a combination of default credentials and Trojanized Open SSH server processes. This activity is linked to MuBot, a botnet based on the infamous Mirai malware that targets Internet of Things devices. APT28 has been replacing legitimate Open SSH server binaries on edge routers with Trojanized versions downloaded from a specific domain. These modified binaries allow attackers to bypass authentication, giving them unauthorized access to the compromised routers. MuBot, the botnet used in these attacks, is designed to exploit vulnerabilities in IoT devices, particularly those with weak or default passwords. By leveraging MuBot, APT28 can infect a large number of devices and use them for various malicious purposes. The use of a Mirai-based botnet like MuBot underscores the critical importance of securing IoT devices. Simple steps like changing default passwords and keeping firmware up to date can significantly reduce the risk of compromise. Once App28 gains access to an edge router through these Trojanized Open SSH processes, they can use the device for a range of malicious activities. These include harvesting credentials, collecting NTLM-v2 digests, proxying network traffic, and even hosting spear phishing pages and custom tools. This campaign highlights the ongoing threat to IoT devices and the need for organizations to implement strong security measures for all network-connected devices, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant they may appear. Credential access via Python scripts. APT28, a sophisticated threat group, has been using compromised Ubiquiti EdgeRouters to host custom Python scripts for collecting and validating stolen webmail account credentials. This information comes from FBI investigations, which have uncovered detailed log files of APT28's activities on these compromised devices. These custom Python scripts are typically found in the home directory of a compromised user on the edge router, often alongside related log files. The scripts are designed to automatically bypass CAPTCHA challenges on webmail login pages, allowing the attackers to access targeted accounts without manual intervention. To achieve this, the scripts connect to an API endpoint specifically used for solving CAPTCHAs. To help network defenders identify these malicious scripts, the FBI has created a YARA rule. YARA is a tool used to detect and classify malware based on specific patterns. By using this rule, security teams can scan edge routers for the presence of APT28's custom Python scripts. In addition to using the YARA rule, network defenders should monitor for connections to the CAPTCHA solving API endpoint. This can help identify compromised edge routers and potential credential harvesting activities. If these scripts or suspicious connections are detected, immediate action is necessary. This includes isolating the affected edge routers from the network, thoroughly analyzing the scripts and log files to understand the extent of the compromise, and resetting passwords for any potentially affected webmail accounts. By staying vigilant and implementing these detection and mitigation strategies, organizations can better protect themselves against APT28's sophisticated credential harvesting techniques. Regular monitoring, prompt response to potential threats, and maintaining up-to-date security measures are crucial in defending against such advanced adversaries. Exploitation of CVE 2023233397. APT28 Group has been actively exploiting a critical vulnerability in Microsoft Outlook for Windows. This vulnerability allows the group to harvest NTLM-v2 credentials from targeted organizations. The exploit was initially a 0-day when App28 began using it in early 2022, enabling them to leak net NTLM-v2 hashes to their controlled infrastructure. To exploit this vulnerability, APT28 uses two publicly available tools, NTLM Relay X.py from the Impacket suite for NTLM relay attacks, and Responder, which sets up a rogue authentication server to capture and relay NTLM v2 hashes. The group has been installing these tools on compromised Ubiquiti EdgeRouters to collect credentials from targeted Outlook accounts. The FBI has found evidence of this activity on numerous compromised routers. Network defenders can detect this activity by looking for responder log files, typically named responder session.log and responder DB. The presence of NTLM Relay X.py and responder tools on edge routers may indicate APT28's exploitation. To mitigate this threat, organizations should apply Microsoft's patch for vulnerability to all Outlook installations, scan edge routers for signs of compromise, reset credentials for any accounts where NTLM v2 leaks are detected, and implement multi-factor authentication. It's also crucial to follow recommended mitigations for compromised edge routers, including performing hardware factory resets, upgrading firmware, and changing default credentials. By taking these steps, organizations can better protect themselves against APT28's exploitation of this vulnerability and prevent potential NTLM v2 credential leaks. Staying vigilant and promptly applying security updates is key to defending against such sophisticated threat actors. Proxy and tunnel infrastructure used by App28. The threat group App28 has been exploiting compromised Ubiquiti EdgeRouters to set up proxy connections and reverse SSH tunnels. This sophisticated approach allows them to maintain persistent access and control over the compromised devices, even when faced with password changes or other security measures. APT28 employs two main techniques to achieve this: reverse proxy connections and reverse SSH tunnels. For reverse proxy connections, the group uses IP tables rules on the edge routers. These rules redirect incoming traffic from a specific port on the router to APT28's dedicated infrastructure, effectively creating a hidden pathway for their malicious activities. Network defenders should be on the lookout for unusual IP tables commands in the router's configuration or bash history that might indicate this type of redirection. The group also establishes reverse SSH tunnels by uploading their own SSH RSA keys to the compromised edge routers. This clever tactic allows them to bypass password authentication and maintain access even after credentials are changed. To detect this, security teams should regularly check for unknown RSA keys in the SSH directories of both the root user and other user accounts on the edge routers. To protect against these threats, organizations should implement rigorous monitoring of their edge router configurations, regularly audit SSH keys, and carefully analyze network traffic logs for signs of abnormal SSH sessions. By staying vigilant and proactive, network defenders can better detect and mitigate APT28's attempts to exploit their infrastructure. APT28's Python backdoor and command and control infrastructure. In December 2023, APT28 actors developed a small Python backdoor capable of executing arbitrary commands on victim machines. This malware, known as MASEPIE, was used in conjunction with compromised Ubiquiti EdgeRouters as command and control infrastructure. An FBI investigation uncovered that App28 repeatedly utilized these compromised routers to communicate with and control their Python-based remote access tools deployed against various targets. While the threat actors didn't install their Python backdoor directly on the EdgeRouters, they repurposed these compromised devices as intermediary servers to manage the malicious software installed on systems belonging to targeted individuals and organizations. To evade detection, the data transmitted to and from these repurposed routers was encrypted using a randomly generated 16-character AES key, making it challenging to identify and analyze the malicious network traffic. The Python-based remote access tool developed by App28 provides the threat actors with a persistent foothold and remote control capabilities on infected systems. This allows them to perform various malicious activities, including data exfiltration, lateral movement within compromised networks, deployment of additional malware or tools, and execution of reconnaissance and intelligence gathering commands. To mitigate the risk posed by this Python backdoor and the use of compromised EdgeRouters as intermediary servers, network defenders and users should take several precautionary steps. First, implement advanced endpoint protection solutions capable of detecting and preventing the execution of malicious Python scripts or backdoors. Second, closely monitor network traffic for any suspicious encrypted communications or connections to known App28 infrastructure, including compromised EdgeRouters. Lastly, review network logs for any indications of encrypted communications or connections to EdgeRouters that may be acting as intermediary servers for the threat actors' operations. By understanding the tactics employed by App28 and implementing these protective measures, organizations can better defend against sophisticated attacks utilizing Python-based remote access tools and compromised network devices as part of their command and control infrastructure. MITRE tactics and techniques. APT28, a notorious threat actor, employs various tactics and techniques mapped to the MITRE framework. Let's break down their approach. In terms of resource development, APT28 both develops and obtains capabilities to support their operations. They've created custom Python scripts to gather webmail credentials and have taken advantage of EdgeRouters compromised by the MuBot botnet. For initial access, APT28 uses two main methods. First, they access EdgeRouters that were previously compromised with OpenSSH Trojans. Second, they conduct sophisticated phishing campaigns, including cross-site scripting and browser-in-the-browser attacks. When it comes to execution and persistence, APT28 exploits vulnerabilities for client execution. To maintain access, they use event-triggered execution, planting bash scripts and ELF binaries that backdoor OpenSSH daemons and related services. The group employs two primary techniques for stealing credentials. They set up adversary-in-the-middle attacks using tools like Impacket NTLM Relay X.py and Responder on compromised routers. Additionally, they modify authentication processes by hosting rogue NTLM v2 authentication servers, leveraging stolen credentials from NTLM relay attacks. Finally, APT28 automates both the collection and exfiltration of data. They exploit to automatically gather NTLM v2 hashes and send data to their controlled infrastructure. Understanding these tactics helps cybersecurity professionals better defend against APT28's sophisticated attacks. By recognizing their methods across the attack lifecycle, from resource development to data exfiltration, defenders can implement more effective countermeasures and detection strategies.